Most people know there are 5 main senses: sight, hearing, taste, smell, and touch. All of these senses influence how we experience the world. But what's the most important sense?
I'll definitely say probably sight, I think. Without that, I don't think you would be able to get an impression of what's going on around you. Obviously, the other ones work just as well, but it's just seeing like everything in colour and in 3D can really kind of like give an impression of what things are without using the other senses.
I think that smell is the most important sense opposed to all the others because it brings out the memories in people more than I feel other senses would. So if you were to smell a food that you were to smell when you were a kid, it would bring out an immediate sense of satisfaction or happiness that some others couldn't.
Of course, all senses are important, but what would it be like if you could hear colour? For some people, this isn't a hypothetical situation. People with synesthesia experience this crossover of the senses all the time. Synesthesia is a relatively common but harmless neurological condition where people make connections between their senses. Some synesthetes, the name given to people with synesthesia, associate letters or numbers with a specific colour. So the letter A might be red, or the number 1 might be blue. Others associate colours or shapes with sounds. And some even make connections with their sense of taste. Scientists have been aware of the existence of synesthesia for over 200 years. But for a long time, they knew very little about the condition. But today, they can use neuroimaging to see how our senses stimulate our brain. The sensory cortex is the part of the brain that deals with the senses. Different areas of the sensory cortex are stimulated by different senses. Scientists believe that synesthesia is caused by an unusual amount of connections between these areas. In the past, synesthesia was thought to be extremely rare. But today, scientists believe between 1 and 4% of the population have the condition. In fact, even people that don't have synesthesia often make connections between their senses. These strange connections between senses all come under the term multisensory perception, and this is currently an intriguing area of scientific research. Professor Charles Spence is the head of the Cross-Modal Research Laboratory at Oxford University. He studies how multisensory perception affects the way we interact with the world and how this can be exploited.
I'm an experimental psychologist working here at Oxford University, and I'm interested in the senses, in hearing and vision and touch, taste, pain, and how those senses get put together in people's heads. And in this building with a lot of neuroscience going on, which means we try and understand the rules that connect your eye to your ear to your nose to your mouth.
Professor Spence calls this multisensory stimulation or multisensory perception.
So multisensory stimulation or multisensory perception refers to the idea that we have 5 senses or perhaps more: hearing, vision, touch, taste and smell. And most of the time when we experience the world or products around us, they stimulate most, if not all, of the senses. So I think most people, when they're studying how the senses interact, tend to focus on hearing and vision. So why it is you hear the voice coming from the lips on the screen in the cinema, that would be called the ventriloquist's dummy illusion. And separately, there are people working in food science, thinking about how smells and tastes and the pain of a chili burn come together to give rise to flavours in the mouth. But those two things rarely come together, and that's a lot of the work that we do. And so that sort of link between, say, tastes and flavours and sound is the last one that anyone thinks about.
He believes we use multisensory perception all the time when we're eating a meal or choosing a particular product in the supermarket. It's an important part of our everyday lives.
So take a lovely meal, and it's got to taste right, it should have the right aroma or smell, it needs to look visually appealing, the crunch, the sound should be right, as should the texture, the mouthfeel or the fattiness in the mouth. So all the senses are involved in the perception of food. And that maybe is the most multisensory of our experiences. But elsewhere, if I think about some sort of packaging or something, say this bottle here, it's got a certain weight, so that's got a tactile perception. It's got a feel of roughness, so that's kind of. It's also got a sound I can hear, a colour, and it'll have a smell. So all the senses are again being involved in my perception of this product and its packaging. And a lot of the work that we do with companies now is trying to help them enhance the multi-sensory appeal of what they're offering.
Professor Spence's team are working hard to improve our understanding of multisensory perception. A lot of this research is very useful for food businesses. Today they are testing how different music can affect the taste of coffee.
We're looking at sort of synesthesia, which is this mixing of the senses. People who see coloured numbers or days of the week are the ones you see on television. But we think that maybe we're all synesthetes, kind of. So that when we give people in the lab downstairs different tastes, flavours, aromas, and we give them a choice of any instrument, any pitch of sound, just pick an instrument and a high note or a low note that goes with that taste. Say it's taste of coffee, or the smell of chocolate, or of raspberries. It sounds like a bizarre thing to do, and yet we've been doing it for years, and most of our subjects give reliable answers that are very similar to one another. So most people will say that sweet is high-pitched and probably a piano, whereas bitter tastes are kind of low-pitched and they're more brassy in nature. And when you find subject after subject who says the same thing, then you can use those insights to try and create soundtracks that synesthetically match the tastes of food.
We perceive the world through our senses. Everything we experience through our sense of touch, taste, smell, sight or hearing. Therefore, a better understanding of how the senses work and how they work together will lead to a better understanding of the world we live in.